Good morning, adventurers. My name is Ben, and welcome to a morning show where I sit around, drink some tea, and talk about D&D. So first up for T&D today, we have the this camping mug from Katami Conservancy. It is the Otis Fat Bear Week Champion mug. If you don't know what Fat Bear Week is, my fiance will be very excited about me telling you because she loves it. She keeps up with it every year. It is essentially just a bracket style competition where you vote on bears before they go into hibernation because they've beefed up over the course of the season. And she's really liked Otis for a while because he's just an old man that likes to sit and fish. And she's super excited this year when he won. Inside of it, we have some honey lemon ginseng green tea from Celestial Seasonings. This is very good. It's a lighter kind of tea. It's mid-ish afternoon right now, so it feels like a good time of the day to have that because there is a little bit of caffeine in it, but not so much that it'll keep me like wired up through the rest of the day. Yeah, there is that for your T&D part of the day. Moving on to what we are actually talking about today. I said a while back that we were going to be covering some of the variant rules in the DMG, and then I just forgot about it. And here we are today covering some of the variant rules in the DMG. It's the long game, or something like that. Today, specifically, we're talking about skill variant rules. That is to say, variant rules having to do with skill checks. It's labeled as skill variants in the DMG. So I didn't just like make that up out of nowhere. That is actually what it is called. Let's get into this a little bit, shall we? So everybody knows, or everybody probably knows, if you don't know, allow me to inform you. Normal ability checks are made by adding the base ability score. Normal skill checks are made by adding the base ability score to whatever D20 roll you have. And if you are specifically proficient in that skill, then you go ahead and you add your proficiency bonus. These variant rules that are associated with this break down that into a couple of different parts, and they sort of like pull apart the different things that you can be doing here. So, starting at the top of this sort of section here, we're actually going to talk about a proficiency bonus itself. So, proficiency bonus is something that scales with you as you level up your character. It is tied to your overall character level and not to your class level, as most other things are. So your proficiency bonus goes from 2 to 6 over the course of your level 1 to 20 character. And depending on where you fall in the middle there, you will have a different set or a different number for your proficiency bonus. So from 1st to 4th level, you get +2. 5th to 8th, you get +3. 9th to 12th, you get +4. 13th to 16, you get +5. And 17 to 20, you get +6. That is to, one, help with the whole bounded accuracy kind of deal as you scale your character up, and the ability, essentially you have to be able to like hit saving throws and hit armor classes as you scale up, and that is the most consistent way to do that. Additionally, it sort of like shows that your character is getting better at the things that they are particularly good at, and it helps sort of like embody that in a mechanical number that you can then use. So the first thing we are talking about is replacing your proficiency bonus with proficiency dice. A lot of these that we're talking about today, a lot of these optional rules just in general, I don't love, but I understand why they exist, and I can see how they would be useful and fun just in general. So, proficiency dice is the first thing that we were talking about. The first variant rule, there we go, that we were talking about. So, proficiency dice are exactly what they sound like. Instead of rolling and adding a static modifier to a skill check, ability check, whatever it is, you can replace your proficiency bonus with a proficiency die. Your proficiency die scales with you as your proficiency bonus would, but it gives you a wider range of possibility for that score that you could be picking up. So, from first to 4th level, instead of a +2, you're getting a D4, and then the die increases by one size category as you go up. So D4 to D6, D6 to D8, D8 to D10, D10 to D12 when you get to that top number. So, while your 20th level character, instead of having a stacked, or a, not stacked, static, there we go, plus 6 to what they're doing, they could roll a d12, and they could see, you know, what that actually gets them to then. There is the possibility, obviously, of rolling 1, but there is the possibility of rolling a 12, which would be particularly interesting, I would say. The reason you would use this, I guess, would be to add another, like, factor of randomness almost to it, and I think that that is a cool way to go about doing that. But I like the static bonus because the static bonus means that you are never going to accidentally short yourself in some way, because in my mind, for my money, the payoff of getting that 12 that one time is not going to be worth it to get the ones the rest of the times. If you can see, the cat is trying to get onto the desk with me behind me here. So I don't love this one, but it is pretty cool. And if you have an expertise feature in there or something like that, like for a rogue or for oh my god, bard, there we go, in particular, or you have the skill expert feat or something like that, you then just roll 2 of your proficiency dice instead of just doubling your proficiency bonus, which does mean, it does mean, to be clear, that you could roll 2d12 and have a bonus of plus 24 to start out with your skill check. Just flat out. Yeah, that rogue skill could have a floating plus 24 plus 5 for a maxed out dexterity. So you're having a minimum of a 30 on that roll, which is crazy. And that would require you to roll 2 12s. But it also does mean that you could have a plus 7 to that roll, whereas your normal static number would be a plus 17. And so it's just one of those things where it's like, I don't know that I would want to take that risk necessarily all the time. The cat is bumping into the back of the computer now. And so I don't love it, but I do think that it is something that I could incorporate into my games in the sense that I could see it being something, one, that I offered players, I let them sort of make that decision on their own, or something that I could say, hey, go ahead and add a proficiency die to this as well. Kind of like an inspiration sort of thing, but bounded to their proficiency bonus, so they aren't getting shorted something, and they aren't just getting advantage. Because advantage is cool, but it feels cooler to get to, you know, roll a bunch of dice instead. He is knocking over so many things. So that is proficiency dice. That is the first thing that we were talking about here. We have 4 different things we're talking about. And I know I went into that one a little bit more than maybe was necessary, but that is the most complicated one of the 4 that we're actually talking about. The next one is the rest of these here, the next 3, are specifically skill variants and skill check variants. So the first one that we were talking about is ability check proficiency as opposed to skill proficiency. So there is a list of, I believe it's 18 skills, something like that. You can have proficiency in any number of them, really. It is possible to have proficiency in all of them. It's actually very easy to get proficiency in all of them if that is what you are going for very specifically. But reasonably, you have somewhere between 4 and 7, probably, that you're proficient with as you're starting out and at lower levels. Now, this variant rule, instead, gives your players proficiencies based specifically on their class, their background, that sort of thing. And by class, background, that sort of thing, I do mean one is tied to your class and the other one is tied to your background. So there's a table in the Dungeon Master's Guide that gives you sort of the different options associated with your ability, or gives you different options for your ability score, proficiency check things that you get. But essentially what it would do is all of the skills, if you have proficiency in wisdom ability checks, all of the skills that are labeled wisdom in your skill list, you would have proficiency added to, in addition to straight up wisdom checks. Now that, to me, feels a little dicier because there are a lot more that are, or there are not a lot more that are. There are significantly fewer that are, you know, strength and constitution based. And so having a strength based character getting strength specifically is not, it doesn't feel great because you're only getting athletics then. There are no constitution ability checks. And realistically, wisdom is going to be your best one for that. and it's just going to be the way that it is. But going down the list real quick, Barbarians get to pick one of these. They get Strength, Dexterity, or Wisdom. Bards get any one that they choose. The cat just knocked a bunch of stuff out of the closet. Somehow, not shocking to me. I'll clean that up in a minute. Clerics get Intelligence, Wisdom, or Charisma. Druids get Intelligence or Wisdom. Fighters get Strength, Dexterity, or Wisdom. Monks get Strength, Dexterity, or Intelligence, which is weird. I feel like those two should be flipped, but they're not for some reason. Paladins get Strength, Wisdom, or Charisma. Rangers get Strength, Dexterity, or Wisdom. Rogues get Dexterity, Intelligence, Wisdom, or Charisma. Sorcerers get Dexterity or Charisma. Nope, sorcerers get Intelligence or Charisma. I can't read. Warlocks get Intelligence or Charisma. Wizards get Intelligence or Wisdom. So, you get to pick one of those things associated with you, and then you would also then pick up one from your background, which is what we'll roll into next here in just a second. To sort of hammer it out, expertise in this one works the same way as it normally would. You don't have to roll additional dice or anything like that like you do when you are doing the proficiency dice instead. Background proficiencies. These are proficiencies that reasonably apply to your background. Hold on one second. I'm realizing that I'm jumping forward here, and I don't want to do that if I am not supposed to be yet. I am not sure why it is like that. Okay, anyway, sorry. Backgrounds. When you are taking background proficiency with something, this is something where you essentially gain proficiencies according to your background. Background being your backstory as a whole, as opposed to specifically the background that you chose, for which these things reasonably apply. So, if your character was an archaeologist or something, who spent a lot of time out pitching at different conferences and teaching a lot of different lectures and things like that, they might have more history and persuasion-based checks, as opposed to maybe somebody who is an archaeologist that has spent a lot of time out in the field, very carefully going through and picking apart like remains and ruins and that sort of thing. They might be better with things like sleight of hand and investigation, as they are looking close at things and trying to piece things apart. So it is something that really sort of relies on your backstory and your work with your DM to determine which proficiencies you actually get. Because if you're playing, I don't know, a soldier that was more of a commanding officer who didn't really see a whole lot of field training or anything like that, I'm almost positive soldiers get athletics as part of their proficiency stack, but you don't feel like your character's background specifically should warrant a proficiency stack in athletics, then you don't have to take that one. You can take something else that better suits the character that you are actually playing, which I do think is pretty cool. Rolling it forward from that to our final set here of variant rule, quote-unquote, things. I say variant rule, quote-unquote. I do sort of like throw these into my game in random spots if I think that it applies. But they're listed here as specific variant rules. Finally, we have personality trait proficiencies, which kind of connects to what I was just talking about, but it is more specific to the actual personality of the character that you are trying to play, as opposed to their history as an individual. This is one that is obviously significantly more focused on the role play aspect of it, it being the game, and making sure that you actually know what your character feels, needs, does, and has done over time. And so the example that they give in the book here is that you first should come up with at least 4 different positive personality traits when creating your character, and at least a couple of negative ones. The example for positive that they give in the book is I never have a plan, but I'm great at making things up on the spot as I go along. Might get a bonus for some sort of like deception when you don't have like a lot of planning happening. That wouldn't necessarily apply if you are actively going through a plan to try and deceive something, but if you are really good at improv and that sort of thing, or your character specifically is really good at improv and that sort of thing, then you would potentially pick up skill and proficiency in the deception skill while you are in that kind of situation. And then a negative one, a negative personality trait example that they have in here is I often get lost in my own thoughts and contemplation, oblivious to my surroundings. You might get disadvantage on perception every once in a while to notice things that are sneaking up on you, that sort of thing, which is sort of something that a lot of DMs will implement anyway. And this whole section is something that people will kind of implement if they're playing a roleplay forward game, just because it is like, it's the way that it kind of goes. If you're focused on the characters, then you are focused on the things that they're doing, the way that they're feeling, the way that they are sort of thinking in the moment, and then you are applying the mechanical benefits and detriments to them in that active process moment. And so it's something that I think a lot of people use without really thinking about it more, but it is, in fact, written out as a rule in the DMG. And that brings us to the end of the rules that we're talking about today. So we're moving on then to our shows for today. We have good several shows that we got going here, a good handful. We have first up, Diary of a Dragon Pit, Star Wars First Resistance, Dungeons and Daddies, Bombarded, Hekva D&D, Glass Cannon, and the Queer Questers. Please, please, please go check them out. Let them know that I sent you, because again, I think that one day somebody's going to say something to me about it, and I think it's going to be funny. That's it. That's the whole reason. I think it's going to be funny. But in all seriousness, everybody on this list really deserves your support. They put a lot of effort into what they're doing, and it takes a lot to actually share your story on the internet. So go check them out. But that brings us to the end of what I have to talk to you guys about today. So thank you very much for making me part of your morning routine. I really do appreciate it, and thank you so much in particular to my patrons. You guys are the ones that make this show possible. If you're interested in becoming a patron of mine, check out the link in the description of this video where you can suggest show ideas and vote on what this show turns into, particularly on Fridays, but just in general too. Yeah, that is everything, I think. So with all that said, don't forget, everybody, drink tea, play D&D, and keep on rolling.